It was told to us that this episode would be the Bridgerton. You know what? No. I've had my fill of starting off my reviews like this over and over again this season, so no. I sincerely believe that the only people watching my reviews already know this stuff, but in case you forgot, this episode is supposed to be in the style of Bridgerton. If you're unsure what Bridgerton is, go to Netflix, look it up. If it's for you, cool. If it's not,
Welcome to the party, pal!
I prefer to call it the bird episode. So let's get this out of the way before you click off this review thinking I'm one of those people. I don't care what sex the doctor is. I also don't care what kind of sex they have. I really didn't mind when the doctor had feelings for Rose. I really don't care if some incarnations had a thing for Clara, even though he was already married. I kind of liked the River story and I loved the way it ended. I just thought the whole of it wasn't executed consistently well, and that's what I care about. Look, the doctor has fought everything from floating fabric to an actual scribble of pencil lead. At this point, just give me a compelling story and I'm happy. The doctor has flirted with people ever since he turned into a Victorian badass, so I'm kind of used to it by now. They are immortal and they have needs, so they might as well get some while you're not presenting as socially awkward or old and cranky. Hell, this isn't even the first time that they've had feelings for the same sex they are presenting in at the moment, and it's extremely doubtful that you haven't seen a same-sex kiss on TV, so if this bothers you, calm down. My problem with Rogue isn't that the doctor went gay with this regeneration. My problem with Rogue is why this immortal ball of charisma is chasing this rude, boring piece of shit. Ruby, being a big fan of Bridgerton, gets taken to Bath in 1813 to attend a matchmaking ball, like the ones on the Netflix series. And of course, there are shape-shifting bird people doing the Zygon and pulling an invasion of the body snatchers. If you think that sounds dumb, wait until you find out the reason they're doing it. Anyway, Ruby gets some interference from the new psychic earrings that she's wearing. The doctor goes to investigate, and Ruby goes off to f*** around. Ruby pisses off some Victorian dudes and has girl time with her new friend while cock-blocking the bird dude from the beginning. Meanwhile, the doctor meets a brooding American bounty hunter named Rogue, with the ability to time travel. If part of that sounds familiar, you've probably watched The Ninth Doctor. Only this time, instead of being distrustful, he goes full-on pick-me and flirts his ass off with this bounty hunter, and the bounty hunter thinks that he's a shape-shifting bird person that he was sent to capture. The two stumble upon another bird person crime, and the doctor gets taken to Rogue's ship by gunpoint. Rogue traps the doctor in a triangle transport and is just about to send him into some netherworld incinerator when the doctor hits the scanner and shows him all of his previous faces. Well, not all the previous faces. If he had done that, we might still be scrolling through all of them. But they do add a couple of them for fan service. We'll get to that. Then they compare ships, flirt some more, basically commit to traveling together if they can figure out the whole work issue, and almost kiss. While this is happening, the doctor reconfigures the little triangle thing to not kill, but send to a barren planet, where they can starve to death for 600 years. Anyway, Rogue seems impressed by what he thinks is a shapeshifter having different shapes, and decides to believe the doctor. Lets him free, and they meet up with Ruby and her girlfriend. They figure out that these bird brains are apparently cosplaying this era of history because it's fun, I guess? And then the doctor and Rogue decide to cause a scandal with some gay dancing in public. No, not that kind, the other kind. No, this kind. And they get into a fake argument to draw out the molting menaces when Rogue drops to his knees and fakes a proposal. This all sends the feather freaks into a frenzy, and they decide they need to play the Doctor and Rogue, so they chase them. Then immediately remember why they are there in the first place and get back to the business of cosplaying this world to death. The Doctor realizes there now are a bunch of these, wait for it, cosplayers, and fixes the triform transport to hold 6 people. Meanwhile, it turns out that Ruby's new friend is one of the Childer, the aforementioned bird people, but she sets her earrings into battle mode. And then she cosplays Bird for the big wedding that the Childer have decided they now need to happen. See, they want to marry into some royalty, move to London, and eventually become king and start wars, just like the British people already are about to do. Somehow, the Doctor gets fooled by all of this, thinks Ruby is now dead, very slowly traps the Childer in the triform transporter until Ruby lets him know that she's herself and not dead. I kind of figured the Doctor should know that by now if Ruby's gonna die, snow would fall and hang in the air, but consistency isn't a big player this season. Anywho, the Doctor now has a choice to make. Send the Childer into the barren dimension with Ruby, or don't. And we all know that he isn't gonna do that, even Rogue, so he distracts the Doctor with a kiss, steals the activator, replaces himself on the transporter, and hits send. Before he does, he says to the Doctor to find him. Bye-bye, weirdos. And the Doctor is sad, sends Rogue's ship into orbit to circle around until he finds him, gets a sorry he didn't call hug from Ruby, and puts a ring on it. The end. So yeah, this episode was one that was really divisive. From what I can tell, some of you really liked it because of the romance story. Some of you didn't because of the romance story. And then there's people like me. So let's keep an open mind and find out the things that I liked. Yeah, okay, this one's going to be a tough one because there isn't a lot. I did like how the Doctor flirted with Rogue. The Kylie Minogue dance scene was pretty funny. I'm salty, but I'm not so salty that I can't appreciate how funny it is to watch the Doctor use the Sonic to play with Rogue. And I think Ncuti is probably the only Doctor that could have pulled off the lip syncing and dancing here. I can't imagine Capaldi or Eccleston even attempting this, but I surely would pay to see it for the comedy. I probably would have liked it a lot more if the Doctor had already figured out how he was going to get out of the trap, which is what I was expecting, but alas, this Doctor seems a bit less interested in being clever and more interested in acting like he's in his mid-20s and can't get his libido under control around someone that he's attracted to. Subpoint. I guess Kylie Minogue is sort of the unofficial pop star of Doctor Who now? I'm not complaining. It could do worse. I like how the Doctor went instantly dark whenever he thought Ruby was dead. There are other parts of this scene that I don't like, but I prefer the Doctor losing his shit whenever he loses someone close to him. Sorry, Adric. You were never close to the Doctor. I was actually a bit surprised that the Doctor didn't do some more jiggery-pokery to the transporter to send these bird bitches to Skaro, or to the surface of the sun, or wherever the Grand Serpent is now. Hell, send them to one of those long corridors that you sent Sutek to. Only this time, check to make sure they're still there. Man, even the Family of Blood got worse treatment, and all they ever did was try to get a Time Lord lifespan. Hey, like your mom, Tecteun, while you broke some lady's heart cosplaying as a human. Hell, the Goblin King got spiked and he didn't even eat one baby in your presence. But these Zygon wannabes get mercy? I did find the end surface level touching. I like things that remind us of all the bad things that have happened to the Doctor and all the things that he's lost along the way and how he handles that. I appreciated that Ruby played the same role that the Doctor played in The Giggle by forcing the Doctor to take a moment and feel the loss by trying to comfort him. I sort of liked the triangle trap thing. Its trap form with the black bottom reminded me of something out of classic Who or even old sci-fi shows. I imagine the younger viewers probably thought it looked pretty low rent, but if you did, I challenge you to watch some of the classic episodes. Actually, just go back and watch the trash can assault Mickey and Rose. I liked that there wasn't any Ruby birth snow for another whole episode. It won't last. Things I didn't like. I didn't like Rogue. Dude just came off like a prick nearly the whole time. Like when the Doctor first talks to him, the guy acts like he is completely not interested at all. Maybe the Doctor's gaydar is off the charts considering his age, but the guy didn't give off any signs that he was into the Doctor. There's some very mild flirting whenever they find the dead lady, but even then it felt like Rogue was just humoring the Doctor's attraction to him. And then he pulls a gun. And the Doctor is nonplussed by this? Seriously, is the Doctor softening up on the whole gun stance? Anyway, the rest of the episode he just sort of stands there and then at one point decides to bend the knee in a mock proposal that felt like a thing that the Doctor shouldn't have been moved by at all. Like, bro, are you ready to get married 2 hours after meeting this boring D&D player? Okay, sure, you have something in common because the guy said he lost his companion at some point, but honestly, it feels like the similarities end there. Because there's lots of people that have lost someone. The guy is a time traveler in name only, probably works for the Meep's boss, is a bounty hunter, wants to kill the Childer, and dismisses everything you say right out of the gate. These are all things you don't like. And he only seems like he's into you the second he either found out you were a Time Lord or saw all the white people that you used to be. Sure, he saves Ruby at the end, but the Doctor was already fawning so hard over this guy it made him look like a 12-year-old girl meeting Tom Holland at a Marvel convention. He didn't even look at his damn wife this way. Look, I've watched Doctor Who for a long time, and I know how powerful and smart this character is. And while we don't really have a good bead on this Doctor's personality yet due to 2 Dr. Light episodes, a fast-paced introduction, and a talking baby episode that really didn't go anywhere, his personality hasn't changed so much that just someone being hot would make him lick the floors. I feel like Rogue would need to be a bit more interesting than this to get this much of his attention. Unless he's just still frustrated for not sealing the deal with Yaz. So the Doctor gets sad remembering a promise he made to Carla to keep Ruby safe when he thinks she's dead. And while I really want to be sad with him, I was just thinking, when the fuck did this conversation happen? Look, you guys are playing this like it's a really important moment between the Doctor and Ruby's adopted mom. And quite honestly, it is, but it certainly would have been more effective if we had already seen it. I know the TARDIS materialized in their apartment some episodes ago, but I think instead of showing that bit of comedy, using this conversation to foreshadow the many times that Ruby almost dies this season would have made my cold heart feel something instead of thinking I may be in the early stages of dementia. Because surely they wouldn't skip over an important scene like this. Hey man, how did you do this? I appreciate you sacrificing yourself for some guy you flirted with for 2 hours, incorrectly assuming that he could come find you with his time and space machine. But the rules for this transporter have already been firmly established. You step foot on this thing and you aren't getting off, even if you possess a sonic MacGuffin. So how is this light shove enough to get Ruby off of this thing? Because it can only hold 6? It seems like you would need to do a little more to get someone out of a deadlock than to have someone just play a game of Duck Duck Goose and decide they want to be transported to the barren wasteland dimension and are just able to pick someone up and take their place. Yeah, the doctor mentions that adding people to the transporter will make it unstable, but unless these dipshit bird folks have twig bird legs in their original forms, can they not also get out of this predicament with a light shove? Also, the doctor didn't think of this one too? Again, I like Ncuti, I do. He's a pretty great actor and he's fun to watch. But this characterization of the doctor not being very bright is starting to piss me off. I don't like the inclusion of the Schalke and fugitive doctor. I can nearly forgive you that you added Jo Martin here because her characterization of the doctor was pretty awesome, if not for the contradictions that it made to the many stories that came before it without much explanation. But the Schalke? Hey, sure, it's cool, and it made the nerds go into a tizzy trying to figure it out, but there isn't a Schalke doctor in canon. Oh, the toy maker messed with the time stream, so now all of Doctor Who media is possible because it created different timelines? Is that the answer here? If you don't know who the Schalke Doctor is, they decided to make an animated version of the Ninth Doctor and his adventures with a cyborg master. It's kinda dumb. Richard E. Grant plays this version of the Doctor, but when RTD brought the show back, this version of the Doctor that was meant to be canon got retrofitted not to be. It was fine for those of us that watched the thing, but like Big Finish stuff, it can be your headcanon if you want it to be, but official canon says no. Or at least it did until this confirmed that your headcanon can be canon too because toy maker. And sorry if you loved it, but this was really dumb and here's why. Let's say all expanded media of Doctor Who is now canon because the toy maker did a thing and because the memory TARDIS now exists. Okay, fine. But if all those stories are true, then the Family of Blood story arc happened twice. So did the episode Dalek. So did Rise of the Cybermen, and the Lodger, oh, and the Star Beast. And they didn't happen in parallel universes. So far, this isn't some storyline that ruined Marvel. The interesting thing about Doctor Who is the Doctor, and what is most interesting about the Doctor is the different incarnations of this same being and what comes from them and their history. Sure, it is and has always been muddy, and a hard subject to stand firm on, but one thing we have always been able to agree on is that 10 came after 9 who came after 8, with a non-Doctor War surprise. We can't go back and shoehorn in the Schalke Doctor because it starts to become dumb. Richard E. Grant would and did make a pretty interesting Doctor, partially because he seemed like he didn't really give a shit whenever he was reading his lines, but he wasn't a Doctor unless you are now saying that Schalke comes before Hartnell, but then that makes Scream of the Schalke a non-canon story with a canon Doctor. Stop doing this shit. Stick to what we know. It's on TV, it's canon. If it isn't, cool story, bro, but it isn't canon. It just makes this shit easier to understand. Do better, RTD. I'm just gonna forget this and move on like you already have seen to have done. Unless you're one of the people that make fan fiction films. You are canon now as much as anything else. Hey, stepping 3 feet away from the window and turning into your bird selves isn't going to help you keep your secret for very long. Plus, shouting your evil plans next to the party isn't really the best idea. Like, I know you decide to just say fuck it in the next scene and all, but you probably could have accomplished all this without outing yourselves or having to explain why everybody that came to your party didn't make it home because you had to murder all the wedding witnesses.
What?
Things I didn't understand. I didn't understand the idea of cosplay for these shapeshifters. It felt kinda stupid. Doctor, you and Ruby were cosplaying the same party. So was Rogue. Or maybe he was LARPing, since he's the one with the nerd dice. We don't say the Zygons are cosplaying humans whenever they do their thing. So why are we explaining it like this now? I know you're not saying that cosplay is bad. I certainly hope you aren't, or you're going to alienate 90% of your fan base. They are killing and shape-shifting into the person that they kill. That's not cosplay, that's murder and identity theft. Plus, why the fuck are these birds doing this in Bath, England, and dreaming about getting to London? Just go to London. You don't need some fake marriage to get close to the king. You can just show up and zap your way into the castle if you grab the right guard and off you go. The farting aliens had a better plan than this. They got to Downing Street by putting a pig in a spaceship and made sure to only pick hefty government officials so that they wouldn't be caught or apparently be called out too much for excessive gas. So, Doctor, you say you cannot kill the children because, as implied, it goes against your moral code. But as of you being a woman, starving things to death seems to be fine. Because you sending them to some barren dimension means they're likely not going to have any food or resources to survive. I don't necessarily know the makeup of these bird people and what they need to survive, but aside from, say, a nest, I would figure they probably need some kind of sustenance to live. And if they don't, Rogue certainly will, and he doesn't seem quite capable of fighting off 5 hungry, flightless fowls that haven't had a worm in 2 weeks. No wonder the Doctor is so sad after he drops into the abyss. He full well knows that they're never going to find this guy alive, and the Doctor is certainly not going to risk life and limb for the skeletal remains of a one-night crush. Hey, when you needed the bird people to be in the trap, why were you not able to just transport them there like you did the Rorth warriors? Instead of just slowly taking your time to put down the last trap and hoping that they don't bum rush you and turn you into a lemon. Like, I know you make a new Sonic every time you regenerate, but if your game controller can't make bulletproof walls, Tony Stark your surroundings, or teleport people, maybe just keep the last one? Did you really need to cosplay this priest? Bro, you didn't even take on his skin. You just stole his clothes. Someone want to tell the giant swallow or whatever the hell he is that just saying you're a priest doesn't make you legally allowed to marry people? Plus, as mentioned, you're likely going to have to murder everyone at the party after the wedding anyway, so why even have it? Forge a marriage certificate or whatever and move on. No need to steal this priest's robes. It's just overkill. I didn't understand why these two were faking this romance. We already know that Lord Stilton is a bird, and we find out later that Little Miss for Brains is one too. So why the fake fight? There's no way they're just doing this for Ruby. Or maybe they are. None of the things that these bird people do make any sense to me anyway. If you've made it this far into the review, you likely have already thought that I was nitpicking this episode to death. But I cosplay as a reviewer. However, I save my best nitpicks for Nitpick Corner. How is there this much smoke outside due to the torches being lit, but no smoke inside at all where there are candles? Look how brightly lit this room is. Look, this is Nitpick Corner, and nitpick's gonna nitpick, but a room that is lit with a ton of candles is still gonna be dark and smoky. I'm not saying you have to go with the full period lighting like Ridley Scott did in the remarkably beautiful film The Duelist, but I would have liked to see some smoke lingering around, just at least for the realism. Ruby, move! Jesus, you know the Doctor is doing something here. So get off your ass while he slowly puts this trap down that he has in his hand that he's been talking about for ages before it goes down. You've been with him long enough to figure out that he's doing something here, so get off your ass and move. So someone help me understand if this can even be classified as a historical episode or not. Because I'm fine with the Kylie Minogue song being played in the time traveler ship, but Bad Guy and Poker Face is really stretching my suspension of disbelief. Look, I know they do that in Bridgerton, but Bridgerton ain't historical, and Doctor Who has at least tried to be slightly historical with its presentation of historical episodes. How did the band get the sheet music to Lady Gaga? And not to be a dick and bring this up one last time, but bro, if paying for the license to use pop songs was so expensive that you literally had a Beatles episode without a Beatles song in it, just so you could mimic a Bridgerton episode, I feel like your priorities are all messed up.
The Sutex Surprise.
Boy, the triad Mary-Do twist in this episode was really shoehorned in. Some old painting of another Mary-Do for 2 seconds was almost like screaming, "Oh shit, we forgot, we need to show the bad wolf sign so we can point it out again in the finale." I don't mind that it wasn't a focal point, it just felt pointless again. It's kind of weird how little they were foreshadowing the big reveals for the next episode. I suppose it was fine, considering RTD probably already knew how the dorky fan base would be poring over the mystery boxes anyway. But from an overall story perspective, all these Mary-Do's over the past 3 episodes felt tacked on. Honestly, if it wasn't pointed out like it was in Dot and Bubble, I doubt the casual fan would really have noticed at all. If you couldn't tell, I wasn't a fan of this episode. It's not because of the romance or any other reason. I just couldn't figure out why the Doctor was so enamored with a dude that really didn't seem like he was that into him. Maybe it just wasn't an episode that was targeted at me anyway. It was fashioned to be like a Bridgerton episode, which isn't my cup of tea, and while I have an understanding of how attraction works, I guess I didn't really understand why the Doctor would be so hot for a guy that came off as so boring. But maybe I just didn't think this guy was right for the Doctor. Again, my reviews are subjective, but I really thought this episode's whole point was to provide a love interest for 15, and I thought that failed. Rogue may have been dreamy for those that think Jonathan Groff is, but a romantic fit for Ncuti's Doctor needs to be a little bit more fleshed out for me than some guy acting aloof, dismissing everything the Doctor says and pulling a gun on him. For this heterosexual cis white male, I wasn't moved. And the bird people were dumb at every turn, and I didn't exactly get all that worried about Ruby almost getting killed for the umpteenth time this season. There were some fun moments and everyone gave it their all, but to really move me, you need to give me some better emotional stakes. I give Rogue a 3. Hate me for not giving too much of a shit about this bad romance if you want, but it didn't really do it for me. Well, we are finally up to the 2-part finale. I cannot wait to look at both the Infinity War of Ruby Sunday and the Endgame of Death. I plan to review each episode individually and then take a look at this season as a whole. If you haven't yet subscribed, why not? You scared? Also, I would love to hear your comments about Rogue and why you loved it, or why you hated it, or why you were indifferent towards it. And if you're not on BlueSky, you probably should be. It's less owned by people trying to completely change everything about the world and more just kind of like how Twitter used to be. Less stress. Plus, really awesome people are there, including one of my favorite people in the world that I have never met in person, Simon Harrison. Follow him while you're at it, and maybe he'll finally get his wheel of cheese. And if we can finally get over the hump of 50 subscribers, well, I'll do something. I don't know what yet. I'm not fantastic about thinking ahead, but I'll do some mysterious thing and you'll for sure not be completely underwhelmed by it. So subscribe. Find me on BlueSky, TikTok, and other places, and as always, if your ham ain't salty, why the hell did you even cook it? Also, fuck you, Rogue, for making fun of his screwdriver. Obviously, it's more than that. It's also a universal remote.